Keep watching The Politics every Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern Time on New York Parrot TV, the voice for humanity.
Oops. Welcome to our show. As you can see, I just got in from a Veterans Day event at Peace Plaza, so please excuse a little lateness. I am Robert Press. Here is my new press pass. It expires in 2025, so you people are going to have me for 2 more years, barring you elected officials, including you new ones that we'll talk about. So let me go to my co-host, Anthony RIVIECCIO. Please introduce yourself.
Good morning, Robert. Good morning, everyone. First and foremost, happy Veterans Day. U.S. Navy veteran myself from 1977 to 1982. My 3 lives, as most people in the Bronx know, my first life is I am an income tax and financial advisor, now celebrating my 32nd year. My second life is I am an adjunct professor of personal finance at Herbert H. Lehman College and Monroe College. And my third life, which brings me here, is I am the founding father of Northwest Bronx Democrats here in the Northwest Bronx, which you could also find on Facebook.
Okay, Anthony, let's go right into Bidenomics. Tell us what's happening with our economy.
Say that again without eating.
Tell us what's happening with our economy right now. The stock market went up, what, 1,200 points yesterday?
Oh, Bob, you always see the good day, but you're not talking about the bad week or the bad month or the bad year or the bad year and a half. Yes, our stock market went up the last couple of days. It went up very much so. Depending on the sector you were in, you could have gotten anywhere from a 3% to 6% gain. Remember, though, even including that gain, year to date, most people are down about 25% from January 1. So, you know, I wouldn't look at the short, and the short gain came from one thing and one thing only. It seems like our economy and the market are concentrating on one word. That one word is called inflation. If it goes up, we're in bigger trouble. If it goes lower in any capacity, the market likes it.
Now, you have some information about Bitcoin for us?
Anyone that's into cryptocurrency, I would presume are aware that in the last 48 hours, depending on how long they've been holding their currency, it's now down about 85 to 90%. In the course of the last 3 days, many things have been alleged, many things have happened with the crypto market. The biggest part of it being that now one of the crypto, and I'm going to try to say it in simple terms because I know anyone that's not in the crypto market may not understand some of the nuances of it. But in the last 48 hours, the crypto market or the crypto exchange, I should say, has collapsed. It's collapsed for a number of reasons, some of which are being investigated right now. So I think it's unfair to point fingers. But what is a fact is that the crypto exchange has collapsed. There was a non-binding agreement for some partners, public and private partners, to maybe take it over, but that has now lapsed. And as of this morning, the crypto exchange has now declared bankruptcy. So as I said to you this morning off air, how you equate all that, and I loved your response, Robert, when I said it to you, is, think of yourself not being in the crypto market, but you're in the regular stock market. So, you own a basket of stocks. You're in the stock market like everybody else. Most people that own 401ks are in the stock market, but of course they have a custodian. So let's say, for example, Robert, your custodian is Charles Schwab, and that's where you have your stocks, but the stocks are still in the stock market. And one day you decide, for whatever reason, you just want to take out $10,000 or $100 or $1 million. You just want to take it out for whatever the reason. Well, you order Charles Schwab to do that. Charles Schwab has to exchange the stocks on the New York Stock Exchange. Well, as of this morning, using that same analogy, the New York Stock Exchange is now bankrupt.
No, just as an example. No, be careful, Anthony. Someone might say, "Oh, Anthony RIVIECCIO said the New York Stock Exchange is bankrupt." It's just
no. As an example to the crypto situation that is happening now. So, do you still own that money? Yeah, on paper with Charles Schwab, whatever you have in that account is yes on paper. Can you take the money out? No, there's no exchange that will satisfy that.
For cryptocurrency.
Correct. For cryptocurrency.
We don't want people jumping out the windows, by you saying, someone hears that. Oh, Anthony.
No, I would say the only ones jumping out the windows is a lot of our younger generation that are probably very concerned because, the younger generation is into cryptocurrency. And I guess to give credit where credit is due, the world market has been looking at it. And of course, the world markets have been trying to find ways to legalize it. But again, as I said to you again off air, they're trying to legalize a system that was inherently illegal. So this is where allegations are still being made as to how the exchange collapsed. And I'm not going to, again, point fingers because I think that's too early. But what is a fact is that 90%, maybe by now even more than 90% of that exchange is bankrupt.
So Mayor Eric Adams gets paid in cryptocurrency. Is he going to get paid his full salary of 200 or whatever thousand, or is he going to get 10% of whatever he normally gets?
Well, let me answer that question in political and economic terms. If he cashed out today, he might get 10 cents to the dollar. If you look at it in political terms, he might want to stay in to be more progressive.
Well, what happened is, Anthony, if you check my blog at www.100%bronx.blogspot.com, I have a story on the U.S. Attorney's Office arresting one of the founders of cryptocurrency, and he's going to be spending 13 years in jail for millions of dollars of fraud. So this is what's happening, what you're saying, correct?
It was happening before it was legal. A lot of people don't understand that in Central America, it was being used 20 years ago to smuggle drug money.
All right. Anything else on economic point? But why did the stock market jump so high?
And that's a very good question. As I mentioned earlier, the word inflation is now the market key word. And just to show you how sensitive the market is to inflation, did inflation go down? Well, year over year, last month to this month, it went down. It went down 7.9 to 7.2. Did it go down? Yeah. Did the market go up tremendously because of that news? Yeah. What was inflation a year ago? Not year to date, but a year ago. It was at 2%.
Well, all right. Anything else to say about, didn't Joe Biden say how great the economy was doing?
Joe Biden, after the economy went up, made some remarks about both the election and then later on in his electoral speech, turned it into an economic speech. And what he was stressing was how government was going to try to help to save America through a variety of government-related programs to help a variety of different people, whether it had to do with social services, healthcare, prescription drugs, and so on. In general economic terms, I would say, he was talking about an increase in government spending. Does an increase in government spending help our economy at this time? Some might say yes. Why? Because interest rates have gone up so much that now any economic boom that people thought we were in, I think now it's safe to say has been modified.
Right. I've been talking to a real estate people, and they say housing, the interest rates are very high, and it's deterring people from buying homes. and they have a
Correct.
fuel inventory.
It's like that. It's like, which one is better, the chicken or the egg? I've had that conversation with many clients over the last 2-3 weeks. How, home prices have gone down. Of course, your first response is, all right, I'm ready, until you see your brand new mortgage interest rate.
Well, all right, let's get away from the economy and everything and go into our name, politics. But before we talk politics, I must say that I was at the Community Board 11 Leadership Committee meeting last night, and we spoke about this offline, Anthony and I. And some boards, community boards, call it an executive board where it's committee chairs and the officers. Community Board 11 calls it a leadership committee. And they allow people who aren't committee chairs or officers to attend the meeting and even speak during the gallery session. However, at last night's leadership meeting on Community Board 11, and this is for Borough President Vanessa Gibson, one of your new appointees just burst out after one of the community members, which was in reference to what happened on Election Day. All right. Then later in the meeting, this same person burst out at one of the committee chairs, and this kept on for minutes. And the people, the district manager, the chair of the leadership committee, tried to say, "Can we go? Can we have some quiet?" Where the sergeant of arms had to bang on the table several times and say, "Let's quit it." And then this person, this new board member that Borough President Gibson put on, stopped and then continued.
Robert,
wait, let me finish.
But you said new board member 3 times. It sounds like you were present. Who was this person?
I'm not going to name names.
Well, then why are you bringing it up?
Why? Because the borough president's office has been advised by several people already of the incident. Okay. But so let me just tell you what happened. The only
but you're not saying who was involved in the incident. That's like saying, oh, I went by the Morris Park Community Association meeting and I saw somebody threw a rock in the window. Did you see who threw the rock? No. Well, thank you for telling me the window's broken.
Anthony, I'm just saying, what kind of people did the borough president put on who never attended community board meetings?
But if you're not going to tell us who it is, then I don't even know if it's a board member.
Fine. It's Christine Culpepper Ruiz.
Oh, okay. She is a new board member. Yes.
Yes. And she's not a committee chair, so she could only speak during speaking time. And she caused such a ruckus that the sergeant of arms finally had to say, you're out of order. You'll be asked to leave if you don't stop. And that's when she stopped. All right.
And she's a new board member.
She is, yes. Now, I never saw her at a board meeting. I don't know if she ever attended a board meeting. We know that she is the state committee woman of the 80th Assembly District. She was on your friend, Assemblywoman Natalia Fernandez's slate. And if we, I don't want to really bring this in, but you had a little to do with this woman, the state committee woman and the assemblywoman on election night, was it? Or election eve? You want to talk about that?
I'm trying to remember. I'm still trying to wake up from the experience. I believe it was election night.
No, it was election eve because we were,
okay,
you and I were walking by the Bronx Democratic Party. We were going to my house, which is 2 blocks away from the Bronx Democratic Party. So do you want to mention anything about that or not?
What do I want to say anything about that or not? You know what? I'll say this.
Or do you want to wait for your Northwest Bronx segment?
No. I mean, you throw so much in there, and it's like coming from right left field. I don't even know where to start. You mentioned Ms. Culpepper being on Natalia's slate. Of course, that's true, but that was in June. That wasn't, right now. Ms. Culpepper, and I say this with love, because I've said it to her personally, has been known in her Morris Park community as a Morris Park activist in more ways than one. And now that she's a member of your local community board, I wish Community Board 11 a whole bunch of luck. She Loud? Yeah. Some people here in the West Bronx would say I'm loud too. Does loudness get results? Sometimes. But I guess you'll tell us in future meetings and in future years how productive her loudness will be. I wasn't at the situation yesterday in regards to election night. I'm sorry, election eve. Uh, on the way back, and I won't go into full detail, except it's well known that Assemblywoman Fernandez and our organization, Northwest Bronx Democrats, do not get along in any capacity. Well, we of course ran into each other on Williamsbridge Road on the way home. I could understand her being not friendly. I tried to be friendly. Miss Culpepper, as I told her both on and off, that I can understand her wanting to defend Miss Fernandez in our conversations and in our heated debates. But as I also said to her, you're debating something that you know nothing about. As I said on our Facebook page and yesterday, I believe it was, and publicly, our differences with Miss Fernandez go back way before Ms. Culpepper. They go back for the last several years. And very simply, what that is between her own version of bullying community organizations and with her own version of what she believes is quality of life. Our organization is in deep disagreement with her philosophy. So, of course, our organization put together a Bye Bye Natalia rally, which I saw got credible press, and I'm sure she didn't appreciate it, and she shared that with me that evening.
Well, I'm just reporting what went on at the meeting last night, and you just mentioned the election eve. I think Ms. Culpepper can be a valuable asset to the community board. I happen to like her. I hope Assemblywoman Fernandez in her new position as state senator will do much better than the previous state senator. I've almost forgot her name already. Well, Alessandra Biaggi. And Assemblywoman Fernandez, or Natalia Fernandez, is going to have to move, since she doesn't live in the district. She lives outside the district in the 36th Senate District. And I'm surprised that the Bronx Democratic County Organization didn't make an issue of that, as they made an issue of Senator Gustavo Rivera not living in his district.
Robert, I'm sad to report to you that sadly today, for the first time in maybe 30, 40 years, Bronx County now has total control of both the 80th Assembly District and the 34th Senate District. So right. I do not believe that the puppets that you refer to are going to do a productive job, especially knowing Miss Fernandez. As far as we're concerned, we already know her record. If she did something on the east side, please let me know, because here on the west side, she did nothing. John, I've known John Sakaro for several years. As I said this morning, I believe he's a good listener. We'll find out soon if he's a good executioner.
Like I said on Facebook a couple of days ago after the election, that the person who has to watch out now is Borough President Vanessa Gibson, because now Councilman Rafael Salamanca, who was running in 2021 or 2020 for the 2021 election, stopped after his district leader, Chief of Staff John Sakaro, lost his election. All of a sudden, he stopped and went back to running for city council, where he's the land use chair. He has another term left, a 2-year term, that is, because there are 2-year terms coming up. This is the election is in 2023 for this final year, 2 years. Then he will be term limited out. So, he has to look for another job. I was told he was the choice of the Bronx Democratic Party for the 2021 election. And when Mr. Sakaro lost his district leadership, I was told, Mr. Press, you killed a borough president candidate. I couldn't figure at the time who it was. Well, now we know it was Rafael Salamanca who dropped out of the race. So It's going to be a fun race between Vanessa Gibson, the incumbent, and the county choice, Raphael Salamanca. And let's see who else wants to get into that race. Maybe Mr. Sammy Ravello wants to run, but I saw him today at the veterans event, and he says he's finished with politics.
Yeah.
But you know what?
I won't go into full detail, but I did tell you I had a meeting this morning with the Republican Party leader, Mr. Michael Rendino, who will be on our show next week. And I would say that from that side of the coin, there are several candidates that were being discussed. So I think from the Democratic and the Republican side, you're going to see crowded races.
Right. We have Mr. Patrick McManus, who will join us after the commercial in a few moments, and we'll discuss the local races there. As far as the statewide races, congratulations.
But wait a minute, Bob. Bob, wait a minute. Let's take a step back. Okay. Let's talk about the red wave. Let's talk about federal politics for just a moment. Okay. Because there's been this debate nationally. Did we have a red wave? And you want to know what? And I think it's safe to say this now. Both nationally, yes, we did have a red wave. We're going to find out by Monday of next week. We might have a slight Republican, and let me call it anti-Democrat, right? Congress, right? So that from a federal level is a red wave. Now, did that red wave crash down into city and state? Yes and no. It didn't crash. I like to say it got scattered. It trickled down. But you could see here in New York City and New York State, for example, there were significant gains on the red side. So, you know, from a federal level, and I know we can debate this, you know, I thought it was a red wave. Was it bigger than the blue wave that, you know, took part several years ago? Well, I think that's subject to debate too. But what I would say, and I'll say it later on, is that between the blue wave and the red wave, guess what, Mr. and Mrs. Establishment? You got a lot of people mad with you. You got a lot of people that say you're not governing correctly.
And it looks like not only did the Democrats pick up Congress and picked up all the Long Island congressional seats that were in Democratic hands, they may pick up the U.S. Senate also. And as you say, locally, the red wave, well, in Brooklyn, 4 assembly seats went to Democrats. I went to Republicans, pardon me, because they were always Democrats, and they picked up another one in Staten Island. So there were 5 New York City assembly seats that would, you know, brought over to the red wave. It didn't happen all over, but it happened in certain areas. And
and you can see to a certain level, we'll talk about it later, you can see it in certain elements of the Bronx.
And, you know, statewide, I'm surprised at the outcomes. The races were very close, not only for governor, but for all statewide races where there were people who never were known who were running. Chuck Schumer just beat a person I never heard of a month ago by only about 5 or 6 points. You know, it's amazing. Even and Tom DiNapoli, as I predicted, got the most votes. Okay, he was the only one who broke 3 million votes, I believe. All right, I might not have picked the winners everywhere, but hey, the Yankees made it to the playoffs, and that was it. They were out in the first round. After me, I made it to the playoffs. I was out in the first round. What can I tell you? We'll talk about it later. We're going to be going to a commercial very soon. Any final words before we go to commercial?
Happy Friday.
Okay, can we go to commercial, please?
Do you know that there is a publishing company that wants to make life easier for you as a writer? This publishing company is called World Inkers Printing and Publishing. We publish in all different languages, and we're looking for writers of all genres, all formats. We're looking for scholars, ghostwriters, playwrights, poets, short fiction, novelists, you name it. We're looking for anybody who is interested in writing and the craft of writing to be in touch with us. You can reach us at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. With World Inkers Printing and Publishing, publishing, you do not require a lot of money to publish with us. Contact us today at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. Become a winner with other authors at World Inkers Printing and Publishing. Give us a shot. We will surely finish you.
In a world where the quality of information available to poorer communities is doctored, tainted, and sometimes regressive, where the words fake news have come to mean other people's opinions, it is vital to rely on news platforms with journalists who have feet on the ground and can report the truth. New York Parrot, a New York-based national and global news outlet, is changing the narratives of media operations. We focus on the news that matters, like self-empowerment, entrepreneurship, finances, health, security, politics, and more. We strive to curb violence, racial and economic discrimination, and to promote peace and socio-economic development of multiculturally diverse world. As we give voice to the people, we also give your business a voice and make it heard. Get your product and services off the ground by advertising on our fast-growing platform. With so much of daily visits to New York Parrot, you can't afford to be invisible to prospective clients on the website they trust the most. Our posts reach millions of people across the New York State and around the world. Advertising on our new site will unlock an audience of thousands of potential customers on your doorstep. New York Parrot is born to prosperously speak tomorrow for the voiceless.
And as the commercial said, New York Parrot is the voice for the voiceless. And that's what Anthony and I try to do. Be the voice for the voiceless people who are out there and just in their homes doing nothing, listening to what's going on. And let's welcome our guest, Patrick McManus, the chair of the Bronx Conservative Party. How are you, Patrick?
I'm well, Robert. How are you?
Okay. Anthony, do we want to go over the local races?
Good morning, Patrick. How are you?
Good morning, Anthony. First, I'd like to thank you guys for having me on. And Anthony, I believe you mentioned at the top of the show, you are a United States military veteran, and I would like to thank you for your service.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, now let's go into the 34th State Senate race. The district used to be from Riverdale to down in the South Bronx through the east side. It was split basically in half, with the Riverdale side being put into the 33rd Senate District and the west side being added Parkchester, Castle Hill, up into parts of New Rochelle. Now, you had a candidate in there, Samantha Zerka. Any comments on her performance in the race?
Her performance was excellent. I believe she put her all into it. She has absolutely nothing to be ashamed of. It's just, I believe that the voters weren't ready. The district had been gerrymandered slightly to slightly favor possibly a Hispanic candidate, judging by the way the lines were drawn. I worked very closely with Samantha and her campaign team, and we tried to reach all the communities in the district. I believe she did perform very well. I just don't understand the results. I'm very disappointed in the results. I still feel that she was the better candidate in the race. She offered the district a lot more than Natalia did. And I certainly would have liked to see a different outcome.
Well, before Anthony comments, I forgot to congratulate Natalia Fernandez on her win. Anthony, are you still with us?
I'm still with you.
Would you like to say something about the 34th Senate race or ask Patrick a question about it?
A few things. Number one, I thought Samantha being out on the streets in that area did one hell of a job. And of course, that includes Patrick being behind the scenes. And I'm not just talking the last couple of days of the election. I can say this now, sort of wearing my campaign manager hat during that time, that Samantha was out there working very hard. So she needs to be congratulated, and so does Patrick McManus and all the people involved in her campaign. The only thing I would really comment on, and I'm going to ask for sort of a minute here to explain it, is to sort of share with you the conversation that I had with Michael Randino this morning. We had a long conversation about a number of things, but one of the comments that came up was about the result. And as I said earlier, let's call the Republican conservative vote the anti-Democrat vote. So in saying that, Patrick, you might, and you were involved in a little bit of what I'm about ready to mention, but I found it surprising that in 2002, the Democrats and the anti-Democrats got 69 to 31. 69 being Democrat, 31 being anti-Democrat or Republican conservative. During that period of time from 2004 to 2014, that number from the Democrats went up from 69 to 83. On the other side of the coin, the anti-Democrat vote went from 31 to 15.
Right.
Today, 20 years later, it is now back to what it was in 2002. So in percentage-wise, whereas the Democrats lost about 18% of voting gains, the Republicans or the conservatives or the anti-Democrats got back all of their losses, which was 62% since 2002. So did you win? Did I win? Did a lot of people on the anti-Democrat side win? Yes and no. Short version, no. But on the conversation that I had with Michael this morning, the long-term version might be yes. You know, on how people like Michael, people like yourself, take advantage of that little wave. And of course, that includes building the party, fundraising, et cetera, et cetera. But I look at these numbers as, yes, short-term, lost. But long-term, the anti-Democrat side, I'll say it again, is saying we're mad.
Absolutely.
Well,
I 100% agree with that, Anthony.
Now, if you look, though, Anthony, at the New York City Board of Elections, Natalia did very well at 63 or 64%, I believe, somewhere there. However, that does not include the unrecorded votes or the blank votes. And since it was not a wholly in New York City Senate district, you had to go to the State Board of Elections, where she wound up with 59% of the vote. Samantha had, I believe, 32% of the vote. A few points, each one lost some points because there were 9% of the vote that didn't cast for either candidate. They just
Robert, if you're trying to analyze the voting power of Natalia Fernandez, which it sounded like you were doing, let me share some numbers with you. In 2012, which that district was run at that time by Mark Jonai in a surprising win, he got 79%. In 2014, that number went up to 84%. In 2016, it went up to 85%. 2018, it went up to 86%. First year, Natalia Fernandez, 2020, 79%. Today, 2 years later, 69%.
Well, again, if you look at the New York State Board of Elections, they include the unrecorded or blank votes, which lowers the percentages. You're looking at the New York City Board of Elections, which gives you the percentages, or they don't actually give you the percentages. They just give you the numbers, and after that, they say unrecorded votes. They give you the unrecorded votes, which means nobody voted for that office. Okay, so that's something. When you talk about how many people and how progressive, you got to add in this 9% extra that didn't vote. Period, for that position, because they were discontented with both the Democrat and possibly they didn't know the Republican. Okay.
Well, that's I said earlier. I would call it the Democrat anti-Democrat.
Right. Or, anti-vote, period. They just came in to vote for either the governor or, we see this in presidential elections where people come into the poll sites, take their ballot and just mark for the president and then put it in. So they don't vote for anything else. Or they're voting for one person. And you could see some positions where it was more 12% that didn't vote. Okay, so you have to really go, if you want the actual percentages. What are you looking at, Anthony?
I can hear you guys, but barely.
All right,
I can hear you.
You have to look at the state board of elections for the results for the Assembly, Senate, and other statewide offices to find the true percentages, because there were, I think, I don't know how many people who didn't vote for governor. And that was, we say that it was a tight race. It really was. Okay.
Yeah, but Bob, you're getting stuck on what I call a very minor percentage.
Right.
I heard you throw out the number 9%.
Right.
That's not accurate. What is accurate is maybe to say 2 to 3%. And I'm not saying that's not important either.
Anthony, I looked at some of the numbers I got to look at was showing about
you and I had a conversation
about
ranked choice voting.
Anthony, let Patrick talk.
Positioning was very important.
Patrick
found out positioning only, it might cover 2-3%. Yes, it's part of the overall strategy, but it doesn't mean anything.
Okay, Patrick, you had something to say.
Yes, I haven't had a lot of chance. I've been trying to catch up on things, but I did see, Anthony, Robert is right. It was over 8% blank, according to the State Board of Elections as of about noon yesterday. So that was a very large number of no ballot, of no vote cast. My personal belief is those are anti-Democrat non-votes that were given, and perhaps those voters just didn't have enough knowledge, and they were responsible enough not to vote for a candidate just based on a party line. That's what I'm walking away from this with. They wouldn't vote for the Democrat and they didn't go to the Republican, so they abstained.
Right.
So again, that is a mark of an educated voter and a responsible voter, to not just see a certain letter behind a name or above a name on a ballot and say, that's where I'm voting.
Right. They didn't vote straight down. Some people voted for different candidates in different positions. And we see that as we're talking, with either it's 59 or 63% for soon-to-be State Senator Fernandez, the governor, Kathy Hochul, only wound up with, 53 or 52%, I believe? Somewhere around there. So people decided who they wanted in what position, unfortunately. Let's go into the assembly races now. Anthony, you still with us? Which race would you like to cover first? Because
whichever one you want.
All right, let's go into the 82nd first briefly, because that was John Greene, a former chair of the Republican Party, and he ran against Michael Benedetto, who won the Democratic primary, but again, he didn't win it convincingly. His opponents gathered almost over 40% of the vote. So John Greene got, 35%, I believe. So any comments on John Greene's performance by either one of you?
Anthony, you want to take it first?
I of course did not analyze that race as much as, of course, my own race. But some of the numbers I have seen, I would say, are, again, reflective to what I said earlier. Did, short version, did John Greene lose? Yes. Long-term version, did that anti-Democrat vote go up? Absolutely. It went up 30-40% to now in the mid-30s. Is that something a party can build on? Well, the answer to that question is over my head.
Patrick?
I'm sorry, just got distracted a moment. John's performance was tremendous. John also was out there. He was trying to spread the word. He was trying to go outside of the box. Co-op City being in that assembly district, I think may have hurt John. It's a Co-op City is a very hard place to make outreach. I know he tried very hard, but as the Republican conservative candidate with not a lot of financing, it's very hard to do that that outreach, the necessary outreach into those communities that it's necessary to actually turn this tide. Again, I have to 100% agree with Anthony. A lot of it was the anti-Democrat vote. People in Co-op City, I personally spoke to several people throughout the election cycle in Co-op City, and they are dying from the crown. They are, and they're done. And many are realizing that it is the very Democrats that they put in power that are instituting these policies, which are adversely affecting them the most. But at this point, it's still a minority of people that are seeing that. And it's going to take a lot of outreach and perhaps we could call it voter education as to what is going on. The Democratic machine in the Bronx here packages things with a certain message, and then their policies actually produce the exact opposite results. And far too many voters are still listening to the words and not paying attention to the results.
I'm going to say that this is probably going to be Assemblyman Benedetto's last race, since Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez now has Co-op City also. So next election, she'll probably be pushing a candidate against whoever runs. If it's Benedetto, and Benedetto was afraid years ago that he might have a primary. And like I said, he didn't do that well in the primary. So if he's got a candidate backed by Alessandra Ocasio-Cortez, who has Co-op City, there's a good chance he could lose. All right, so I'm looking for this to be Assemblyman Benedetto's last term.
So you're saying a more progressive is on the horizon? That's
what I'm thinking. Let's move to the 81st Assembly.
Wait a second, Bob. Bob, wait a second. First and foremost, Robert, be aware I'm foregoing my segment, so we got a couple of extra minutes, okay? So let's get back to the 82nd for just a moment. So, I guess my bigger question is how do you feel based on the John Greene numbers and knowing how that area is feeling from an anti-Democrat point of view about next year's city council race?
Next year's city council race? Well, it's going to depend on.
No, not you, Patrick.
Oh, Patrick.
Oh. I'm sorry. Can you go back a little there, Anthony?
Sure, not a problem. And again, Bob, like I said, we got a few extra minutes. I'm going to forego my segment because the contents of that segment I sort of put in this segment. But Patrick, in the 82nd, just like in the 80th, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a few minutes, many people think those numbers are respectable. I told you personally one reason why. So how do we look, or how do you see the city council race next year in that location?
It's going to be crowded, I can tell you that much. But aside from that, it's going to depend on many things. It's going to depend on economy. It's going to depend on crime, because voters do have a very short memory. Okay. So if things start to turn around, they're going to forget what we're living through right now. If crime drops between now and the next election cycle, the voters tend to forget that. So we may lose some of that backlash if things get better. I'm not saying they're going to get, I don't have a lot of hope for that, honestly. I do still feel we have not reached the bottom yet. And the voter sentiment is going to totally depend on the current environment at the time next year.
Patrick,
I'm sorry.
Finish.
I was going to say, I forecast darker days and probably more of an anti-democrat sentiment.
Well, Patrick.
So you're saying Bob's taking money out of the stock
in.
market.
Anthony, let me get something in. Okay. Now, you're forgetting, Patrick, that the current councilwoman is not liked in the 82nd Assembly District for the Bruckner upzoning. All right. And there'll be a lot of votes, anti-votes for that. Plus, she lost the 82nd Assembly District to the Republican candidate last year. She won the 82nd Assembly District. And in the 82nd Assembly District, you have that just home for the prisoners from Rikers Island at Jacoby Hospital. Now, if she lets that get passed, there's no way she can win. All right. And she might as well just not run next year.
I have a sneaky suspicion that she will not be running next year. I've heard others speak, and they sound like they're heading for a run for that office. Others in the Democratic Party. I believe we've both discussed it. I think everybody's very aware that we may see somebody re-arise for that position, let's say. I do not believe that the current councilwoman is even going to be in the race next year.
All right. So, okay, let's move on to the 81st Assembly District, where your candidate did the best, coming in double figures.
Yes.
And the 81st Assembly District was where the Conservative Party candidate put Jeffrey Dinowitz into office, because Mark Friedlander at the time was supposed to run on the Conservative Party line, decided to run on the Liberal line, and the former chair of the Conservative Party put up a fire chief who covered Riverdale and lived in Woodlawn, who got 18% of the vote that would have gone to Friedlander, thus putting Jeffrey Dinowitz in office by 202 votes. So what do you know, there was no Republican in the race, because I believe that was your person. It was a problem. It
was clerical. That was all clerical.
And Jeffrey Dinowitz got his normal 75%, even though he had no one really running against him. Your person was doing a film at the time, and the Working Families Party candidate didn't even do anything. So that was the normal 25% anti-Jeffrey Dinowitz vote. And that's where your candidate did the best. Any comments, Patrick?
Kevin did an admirable job for his resources and what he had behind him. Again, unfortunately, it was clerical error that caused Kevin not to be on the Republican line. He did have the support of the Republican Party, and the Bronx chair, Mike Rendino, did provide support for Kevin. But Kevin is a working father of, I forget if he has 3 or 4. And, you know, he had to put feeding his family above campaigning. And I believe that hurt him. But this is what happens when, you know, we have professional politicians in office. It's very difficult for the ordinary man to get in office. I've experienced it myself. I made a run a few years ago. It's almost impossible to run against this well-oiled and well-funded machine. You know, every candidate on the Democratic ballot, just about that I could think of, is a professional politician or a career politician, as it may be. If you have to work a 9 to 5 to feed your family, you just really can't compete. And that's one of the things that really needs to be corrected with our electoral system. And that is what Kevin faced, and why, you know, he had admirable performance for what he had. But that is the reason.
Okay, Anthony, any comment?
Just 2. Number 1, I thought Kevin did way above average as far as what people were expecting. Number 2, though, you know, the 81st Assembly District is actually morphing into change within itself. The Ben Franklin Club, which for decades was known as, Patrick just mentioned, a well-oiled machine, is no longer really well-oiled. They've lost their two district leaders, which have now created a second political club in Riverdale called the Unity Democratic Club. They're reaching out to the non-Riverdale parts of the district, which Jeffrey's club could really never totally control in the first place in the last 10 years. So I believe in the next 4, 5, 6 years, both the Democrats and the anti-Democrats are going to be doing a lot of building and rebuilding.
Okay, Anthony, let's go into the final one, the 80th Assembly District. Let's hear from Patrick first about the 80th Assembly District and how his candidate did.
Okay, once again, Tiz was out there. She was doing all she could, but she is another, another victim of the system, shall we say. She has to work a 9-to-5 job. She's up against opponents. She was up against somebody who had tremendous backing, both financially and was given the time necessary to be out campaigning. Now, I don't know if he was actually campaigning while he was on the payroll, which is another question that begs to be asked. Again, she performed very well for what she had. Going back to Anthony's anti-democratic vote, that was a big part of what we're experiencing here in the 80th. People are unhappy with our current leaders. I believe it's a majority of people are unhappy, but unfortunately, that majority of unhappy people do not come out and vote.
Let me just say one thing, Patrick. You said he spent a lot of money. Now, I've been looking at the New York State Board of Election financial disclosure statements, and I can't find anything from John Sakara Jr., who won the race, and congratulations, John. So, Anthony, you were Phyllis Tiz Nastasio's campaign manager. Anything to say about the race?
I have several things to say. Considering we only have 2 minutes, I'll try to be brief.
No, we have a little more extended time.
What I'll simply say is I thought Tiz did wonderful. Yes, she had a full-time job. She tried to be out there as much as she could. I thought, of course, the campaign could have done many things better. We, of course, did not do some things that we could have done. We did some out-of-the-box things as well. And what it all comes down to, as we were talking about a minute ago, is those races, the 80th, the 82nd, I'll even go as far as saying the congressional race with Tina Forte. It shows a level of anti-democratic vote, which has gone up very significantly in the last 20 years. So I think, it could be looked at as not a whole Democratic victory. Yes, they're celebrating in Somos this weekend, but when they come back on Monday, I'm sure a lot of the old timers are looking under the hood car, and they're seeing exactly what I'm talking about. That there have been as high, and now I'm talking the 80th Assembly District, where the last vote prior to this was Gene DeFrancis at 18%, and before that it was 14%. So now it's 31. Can you build on something like that, which is pretty much a very significant increase? I think you can, but again, the answer to that is over my head. I think Tiz did a wonderful job being out there, and I know she was happy to be out there. And like with many other people, she might have future endeavors herself.
Okay, Patrick, any final words?
Actually, I would like to comment a little on the election system overall. I visited
about a minute.
Yep, real quick. For the first time, I visited at least 15 sites on election day. the way our system is treated, I'm not saying, votes are being stolen. I'm not saying elections are being stolen, but there's just a general cavalier attitude towards following the laws in just about every site I visited. And we really need to address that issue. Ballots are being mishandled. Things, it was absolutely appalling, some of the things that I saw on election day. Again, I'm not saying elections stolen, but we need to treat our system with a lot more respect than it is currently being treated with.
Okay, well, we have a few more minutes. Our producer extended our time since we started a couple of minutes late.
Let me follow up on what Patrick said. We also have to know why Robert Preston's got thrown out of poll sites 5 times in the last 3 elections.
Well, that's what I was going to talk about.
Okay.
Every year I go into a poll site and I have problems with a coordinator. All right. And the problem's not with the Democrats. 4 of the 5 times have been with the Republican coordinators. I have 2 sheets from the Board of Elections which say exactly what I can and can't do. I'm the only person, the media, I should say, are the only people who can film inside a poll site. All right. I heard that one of the candidates filmed another candidate inside the Morris Park Morris Park poll site. I mean, I'm waiting to see that film. All right. Because, if you're being accused, but that film must have been destroyed. When I went in to talk to the coordinators, the Republican coordinator asked the police officer, after a few minutes to get rid of me. And when I showed the officer my papers, that it says I could be here all day, he just sat back down. But this is the problem. The coordinators aren't trained right. They don't know how to do it.
I got other reports, but we'll save that for another show.
Go ahead. We have 3 minutes left. Anybody else want to say anything?
No, I'd love to come back another time and discuss some of the issues with the election system. And you're 100% right, Robert. I had a site coordinator tell me that you had to, you couldn't campaign within 300 feet of the door of the polling site. And this was a coordinator. I said, well, why does the Board of Elections sign right there say 100 feet? Because they asked me where I was getting my information. That's the Board of Elections. And you're 100% on point. I encountered several coordinators that had absolutely no idea of what the rules were.
Anthony, any final words?
I want to wish everyone a happy Friday, a happy weekend, and most importantly, please thank a veteran today.
Yes,
absolutely.
A happy Veterans Day to all the veterans. Like I said, I was at Peace Plaza just before the show. That's why you saw me fixing my tie when we went on the air. And it was a beautiful ceremony by Joe Ronda and Gene DeFrancis. I only wish that more people showed up, but it was, rain was coming down a little, so that probably kept some people away. But thank you to both of you. I couldn't make the Van Nest Memorial Day celebration because we went on the air at 12 o'clock or 12:03. So let me say by thanking our guest, Patrick McManus,
Thank you, Patrick.
You're very welcome, guys. Anytime.
And everybody who watched us. And if you haven't watched us right now, tell your friends they can view us on YouTube. The show will be there.
Subscribe.
And thank you for watching. Have a good day.
Okay.
In a world where the quality of information available to poorer communities is doctored, tainted and sometimes regressive, where the words fake news have come to mean other people's opinions, it is vital to rely on news platforms with journalists who have feet on the ground and can report the truth. New York Parrot, a New York-based national and global news outlet, is changing the narratives of media operations. We focus on the news that matters, like self-empowerment, entrepreneurship, finances, health, security, politics, and more. We strive to curb violence, racial and economic discrimination, and to promote peace and socio-economic development of multiculturally diverse world. As we give voice to the people, we also give your business a voice and make it heard. Get your products and services off the ground by advertising on our fast-growing platform. With so much of daily visits to New York Parrot, you can't afford to be invisible to prospective clients on the website they trust the most. Our posts reach millions of people across the New York State and around the world. Advertising on our new site will unlock an audience of thousands of potential customers on your doorstep. New York Parrot is born to prosperously